Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. Cuddles is caterwauling, so we're probably going to be hearing him go the entire video. Suck it up, Cuddles! Be a man! Alright, so this week I appeared on the Bunderdrome with Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini, two of my favorite comics creators. We just chatted about all kinds of things like animation, manga, storytelling. They asked me to just kind of like basically tell the story of how my channel came to be. So great channel, you should check them out. While I was there, they asked me like, what am I reading recently? I'm reading The Legend of Zelda recently, and Mark's a real. They're both great geeks, but like Mark was familiar with it, and he roasted A Link to the Past by Akira Himekawa as having a like original fan character. Do not steal, and I had just started A Link to the Past when we had that talk, and as I was reading it, I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, I repressed some memories about A Link to the Past manga. She is very much, Ganti is very much an original character, do not steal kind of a character. A Link to the Past is not Akira Himekawa's strongest work. I think overall their work is very solid. I also think that, the newest one they're working on, Twilight Princess, is like a step above all of their... Listen to him. Should I let him in? Okay, I'm letting him in. Hang on, you guys. Get in here. Get in here. All right. They were all going to think I was mean. Here you go. Say hi. Now you're going to go sniff around and probably... Get off the cord! Get off the cord! All right. Anyway, Suma Tangent time. Are you going to shut up now that I've let you in? Oh, boy. Can we save this take? We can do it. All right. So... Akira Himekawa were introduced to The Legend of Zelda by Ocarina of Time, and I think that kind of colors their understanding of the entire series. Whereas Shotaro Iwata, you can tell that he made his manga... He's going to meow the whole entire time. You can tell that he made his manga before Ocarina of Time came out, because everything is kind of different. And I've actually been thinking about the way that Shotaro Iwata draws like beautiful medieval thatched roof houses all day. He just wanted something to establish that this is a quaint little medieval culture. So he actually researched real medieval houses to get a feel for that. So, spoiler alert, Akira Himekawa lose the manga death battle with Shotaro Iwata, but that's not a dig on them. I love their overall work. So, hopping into it, part of my point is there are actually things they're doing really well, even if I think it's one of their weaker works. You should still get this because the Majora's Mask manga is so freaking good. Like that, this alone justifies the price of purchase. They interpret Link differently each time, and they kind of get that each version has its own vibe, each Zelda has her own vibe, so you've got to try to establish them fresh each time. So their idea with the A Link to the Past Link is that he's a pure heart, because at the end he touches the Triforce, and the Triforce gives physical reality to the wish of your heart. So because Link has a pure heart, him touching the Triforce fixes everything. So they decide, okay, we've got to make him having a pure heart the central theme of the character, which is kind of rough because a purely pure-hearted character, there's not much meat there, there's not much weakness there, but they've got this nice little motif that he's an apple farmer, and the love and care he puts into his apples kind of represents the love he has. And they also kind of like give you some hints of what his uncle is like, how he's kind of maybe like a strict father figure for Link, so that when he dies, it has a lot more impact than the Shotaro Iwata manga. They're very interested in kind of showing you hints and pieces of the characters' lives and upbringing outside of just the games. So they win the fight on like giving the death scene emotional impact. Jumping ahead, they also really nail kind of like the romantic beats. I think that I like how they always put like pregnant pauses on like key moments. Is the A Link to the Past? I feel like romance is a bigger part of later Zelda games. I don't think there's that much romance in A Link to the Past, except maybe what the player is imagining. But they kind of like hint that it might be there without making it take too much of center stage. I'm trying to remember why I marked some of these. Okay, the strength of the A Link to the Past Akira Himekawa manga is it is it's more decompressed than the Nintendo Power one. And they actually are finding interesting things to put in that space, but I think it costs them later. They're interested in building up the character at the front, so they kind of like stretch out the whole like start of the journey where he's trying to get his bearings, and they introduce their original character Gonti. All right, so original character Do Not Steal. Gonti, I kind of feel like she was created by looking at motifs from other Zelda games and kind of combining those. So, they're like desert women in Zelda games. And Tetra is kind of like a tough girl, pirate girl who gives Link a hard time, right? So they kind of come up with like this desert pirate girl who's cute and gives Link a hard time. And that actually kind of fits. It fits tonally with some of the later Zelda games, but I think and they actually also do some cool character things with her, where she's got like this rage against the Hyrulean Knights, but she likes Link, so she has these tortured feelings about it. So it's not that they're not giving her, and they are giving her some characterization. I just feel like ultimately she doesn't quite fit with the Legend of Zelda, especially like at the end fight scene when she just has a bow and arrow, and it's like she's saying, "I'm here, I'm helping too." It's interesting that both of these adaptations added an original character. But I feel like what Shitaro Iwata did is maybe more interesting because Link's never had a rival. So him thinking, wait, I should give this kid like a young boy rival. That's kind of like a great idea that I can't believe that Nintendo hasn't capitalized on yet. So he wins that part of the fight. More of her character development. Jumping ahead. I'm trying to remember why I marked some of these things. Some of these things I might have just marked because I remembered. Oh, yeah. Okay. So both of these involve like turning into an animal when you enter the Dark World. And I love how Shitaro Iwata's animals were just like cute Western cartoon animals. And Akira Himekawa, they literally just draw furries. Horrifying fursuit people. And they explain that the reason that people turn into furries is because they're degenerates and the Triforce senses the evil in the hearts. Don't get mad at me, furries! I didn't say it, blame Akira Himekawa. Furries are degenerates. There's also all of these stories. What's kind of interesting about them is they're all variations on the theme of the hero's journey, right? And maybe what I'm interested in is it's always interesting to say, oh, the hero's journey. He goes on the quest. He finds the sword. He saves the princess. He receives a boon from the good wizard. He defeats the dark wizard, right? But I don't like dumbing down stories just to that. And so maybe one of the most interesting things about this manga is most of them follow that same beat, story beat path, but the variations in theme to me are maybe the most interesting things. So the Nintendo Power one kind of makes a big deal of Link getting defeated and being humiliated, almost for comedic effect. You're supposed to laugh as you watch him get beat up by the wizard in the Nintendo Power one. And Akira Himekawa's tone is generally a little bit more serious, maybe a little bit more pathos to it. But then they kind of like de-emphasize like how stinging his defeats are because they're clowning him a little less. So okay, the worst section is when they try to like sum up all the boss battles. They basically just do like an 80s montage. Then we beat this guy. Then we beat this guy. Then we saw this. Then we beat this guy. Right? I feel like Iwata did a better job of like he reduced the number of bosses he showed, but then he gave each boss more impact and he'd like show it on a whole 2-page spread, filling up the entire page. So that whole section is probably why I think it's pretty weak. And there's this neat thing they both use like the beast transformation thing differently. So the Nintendo Power comic, Link's a much more flawed character. He's kind of a coward and he's kind of neurotic and pessimistic, which leads to a lot of like comedy when he realizes he's being too pessimistic and he's got to like buck up. Himekawa's interpretation is a more pure-hearted character, someone who's kind of incorruptible. So right at the end, at the climax, he's starting to become corrupted. He's starting to turn into a beast. And Aghanim almost kind of has like this Emperor Palpatine sort of gambit. Give in to your hatred. And my problem with this kind of a plot line is I don't think it's evil if you're mad at a villain for killing someone you love. It's bad if you turn into the villain to get revenge for that, but it's not wrong to be mad that the villain killed someone. So what was Luke's plan in the Return of the Jedi? Anyway, was his plan to like sneak close to the Emperor and kill him, and then that didn't work out because the Emperor was too powerful? No, it seemed like Luke's plan was just, I'm gonna go tell the Emperor that I'm good, and then he's gonna kill me, and I'll win. And I won't fight my I love that one was actually my favorite one as a kid. But the more I think about it, I don't get what Luke's plan was. Right? I don't get this whole if you feel mad for a second, you're a bad guy motif. But anyway, they both had their own different interpretation of Ganon's castle. Shotaro Yowoto literally imagined it as like a moon floating in the sky, which kind of had its own creepy effect. Himekawa imagined it more literally as a castle on the ground, shrouded by mist. I kind of like the creepy effect of it floating in the sky, honestly. Zelda feels a little bit more useless in Himekawa's because she just gives the arrows to Gonti because she's such a special original character. All right, but then they do cool stuff like I'll show this in the notes, but they ask themselves questions like, what is Aghanim's backstory? Why does he want the Triforce? What made him give in to Ganon? And they just have like the idea, well, he was a friend of Link's father. The father was kind of guided by the virtue of courage. He was guided by the virtue of wisdom, but he became corrupted. He thought, if I can use the Triforce's power, I can make everyone in Hyrule happy. I can bend them to their will, and that makes him corruptible by yeah, I'll talk more about this kind of became like a mini preview, I guess, of my Iwato versus Himekawa video. But I'm not going to pick a winner in that video. Spoiler, Iwato and Nintendo Power, that version of the comic wins. But I want to show you, okay, they have a whole little interview with, what's his name? The director of Legend of Zelda, Aonuma-san. All right, so they talk a little bit about, like horse riding and what that means to them getting introduced to Ocarina of Time. If Link never did anything but fight monsters, it wouldn't be a good manga. Jumping ahead, they have some really golden thoughts. I should have. Okay, I didn't know this. So they meant Aonuma mentions that the Rito race, which appears in Wind Waker, was influenced by the manga. I couldn't believe that, and he also mentioned that the staff would kind of read some of the manga for a little inspiration while working. So I always thought that, okay, this is kind of a cool little manga, but I never imagined that it would actually have an impact on the game franchise. Roru of the Watarara was an original story we created. It came about through our encounter with The Legend of Zelda. We couldn't have come up with Roru completely on our own. When we were asked to write a bonus story, we wanted to introduce a new race, but all that was left was one that could fly in the sky, right? Like, because there's water, there's volcanoes, there's forest, there's sky. That's great. It's just simple process of elimination. And I love that. I love that they had an impact on the games. They also talk a little bit about how Link isn't a Superman type of character. That's what's so great about him. They love this character so much. There was something else. Okay, this also was, this part of the interview was also interesting, where they did the Four Swords manga, and it's black and white, and there are 4 copies of the same character. So how do you help the audience distinguish each one? So they had to come up with like a little motif to help us separate them visually. Really, really good thinking comics. You have to think differently to make good comics. It's not enough to just draw the pretty pictures. In the game A Link to the Past, the characters rarely speak, so there isn't much of a story. Because of that, I think readers hope we as authors will let our imaginations run free in fleshing it out. As for me, I'll be looking for anything that might serve as a hint for me in the Legend of Zelda game I'm developing right now. So that's Aonuma actually commenting on, they were working on Twilight Princess, actually. Where is it? There's this really great thing. Okay, so Aonuma comments on Four Swords and compliments them. Even though the manga is black and white, the differences between the 4 links were very clear. Nagano, that was only possible in the manga. Even without color, we can add color through facial expressions. Honda, manga are basically a code. Even with simple characters such as the links in Four Swords, you can change their expression by the slightest difference in the lines you draw. This is the magic of manga. Nagano, just one line. It's quite amazing. And I think black and white has its own appeal. This almost reminds me of Scott McCloud talking about manga as being scanned rather than read. Anyway, really dope. Okay. The whole point I'm trying to make is these guys love the characters, so even when they don't live up to my expectations, they're doing something really, really smart. They're thinking critically about how to approach the character. So, they write, Majora's Mask has a quirkiness about it that is enjoyable precisely because it came after the more mainstream Ocarina of Time. They get the appeal of the game. Link, having experienced the adventures and battles of Ocarina of Time, returns to his childhood 7 years earlier, with those memories and sets out on a mysterious and strange journey. He's a child, but with experience, so his knowing and slightly cool personality matches the bizarre world of Majora's Majora's Mask, so they get how his experience shapes him for the next adventure. By contrast, Link in A Link to the Past is a boy without any rough edges, who harbors no ill will toward anyone, which is key to the climax. Since this is a series, the protagonist is always Link, but his personality changes with each volume according to the dominant concept, making him a different person each time. Nonetheless, what flows underneath is the same. Since this makes him rather rare as a manga hero, I always struggle at first to establish the character, but those changes are the one reason that I've been able to work on this series, and that others have been able to enjoy and read it for so many years. I want to try to find, I lost it, I want to find the questions they asked about Aghanim's character, because that's kind of like the key to good storytelling. All right, rough sketch of the good wizard, rough sketch of Aghanim, a villain with an intelligent air about him. So in the Nintendo Power one, he's more ugly. They decided to make him a bit more handsome and maybe a bit more of a court player. If possible, I want a reason why he turned evil. So can I create a backstory? I want a human element, unlike Ganon's absolute evil, a weakness in his heart. What does he want? Why does he want the Triforce? That would lend the story depth. Great questions. Hey, are you all right? Why does he want the Triforce, Cuddles? Do you know? Uncle and a rough sketch of Ganti. She's fearless, bold, physically strong, and naive. Her presence lifts everyone's spirits. Original character, do not steal. All right. And they think in their rough sketches about like how his body language is different, how his age is different, and so he's a bit more gangly. They take a little inspiration from the manual. Princess Zelda, I think it would be nice if she had a mysterious aura, like a fairy doll. Give each version a different feel. All right, so not their best work. I dig. Now there he goes again. I dig Majora's Mask. That justifies the cost of purchase. I'm actually currently working my way through Ocarina of Time, so we'll keep working our way through this series, and I'll try to crank out like a video essay comparing the two, where like, I don't know, maybe like my cat won't be meowing throughout the whole thing. All right, Cuddles, let's say goodbye. I'm the Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you later. Woo!